Hello and welcome to Readware Ad Exchange Publisher Summit. I am Jitin Chaudhary and I work with the online partnerships team here at Mediology Software. I also help publishers digitize, monetize, and build first party data audience. But before we move ahead to our panel discussion on Road to V shaped recovery in the year 2021, let's recap. The year 2020 started with a positive note, and we all hoped to overcome our challenges from 2019. But who knew this year will turn out to be an unforgettable year for all the wrong reasons? The COVID 19 pandemic has turned economies upside down and has created greater risk for digital and print publishing industry. Now that we see some bit of stability coming back, we thought it's a great opportunity for publishers to interact with the business leaders themselves. So let's begin our panel discussion by inviting our first panelist, Mr. Sanjay Sidhwani, CEO, Indian Express Online Media. Hello, Sanjay. How are you? I can't hear you, Sanjay.
Okay, just give me a second.
Now it's good. Just say. Sorry. These glitches on live event. Yeah. Yeah, now I can hear you.
Great.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for taking out time. So before I ask you a question, let me invite the other panelists too. So the second panelist that we have today is Sushil Tyagi, Journal Manager in Adu Publication. And the third on the panel we have is Abhijay Chopra, Director, Punjab Kesari.
Hi, Jitin.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Good to have you all here.
Thanks.
So
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is it audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
All good. So the first question I'll shoot to you, Sanjay, is we have all seen how the economy crashed in the month of April 2020. And we as a company were at the lowest in terms of business volume. But the shining light during this depression was the positive uplift in terms of users and content consumption. How has been your experience in terms of revenue volumes falling and consumers going up? And what strategies did you adopt for the same?
So I think there were two things that were at play for us. One was that since last year we had started on a plan to rationalize our costs across a lot of areas. So as we entered COVID, we had already kind of optimized a lot of our costs. And secondly, what happened was while the audience growth was witnessed by everyone, we had a fabulous growth on our flagship product, which almost grew 4x between March, April, and then May onwards. So that kind of pulled us through this COVID crisis very well. And in fact, except for the big dip in April and May, we saw demand kind of coming back. Of course, it was not at the peak levels that we had before COVID, but I think it kind of started improving. And from the second quarter onwards, things started to normalize to a large extent. So I think from a financial perspective, the year hasn't been too bad. We must also realize that working from office, while problematic, also had its advantages. A lot of overheads and costs came down. So from a bottom line perspective, that helped to cushion the impact of lower revenues to some extent. As we continue to work from home, those cost cuts still remain in play. While your revenue kind of heads towards normalcy. So from a bottom line perspective, I think it's going to be one of the better years that we've had. From a top line perspective, we are hoping to be better than last year. Of course, we would like it to be much better, but I think it's going to be definitely better than last year. From an audience perspective, it's superb. We've seen growth across all our properties, ranging from, as I said, as low as 50% going up to 4x of what we were doing last year.
Right. So, I'm sure the audience growth is phenomenal for all panelists here. So, Sushil, asking you the same question, what has been your strategy in 2020 when you saw this decline in revenue and growth in audience?
So, Jitin, if you'll analyze this 2020, it's a normal phenomena when there's a dark period came. So it came with the challenges as well as opportunity. Like every coin has a two side. So here also, as you have also mentioned, that there's a decline in revenue, advertising revenue, but there's a surge in the consumption, news consumption. And no doubt, Indian media industry heavily depend on the advertising revenue. And reduction in revenue really pose some challenges to all of us. But if you will see the what is our prime responsibility is the communicate authentic news to our readers, which requires a lot of efforts and hard work. And we are getting benefit of it also because we are getting very high credibility and highly engaged audience. During COVID pandemic, also what we have seen that the readers were spending more time with trustworthy news organizations, and it is a positive sign also because this pandemic has given us a new wing to the reliable or trustworthy the media organizations. Those who are really investing in true journalism and countering the fake news or sensational news. And this period where the advertising revenue was dropped is a small period. As Sanjay has also mentioned, we have also taken some precautions and preventive measures. And this is like a V shape only. So the first 2 3 months was bad, but recovery was also very fast.
Great. Thanks, Sushil. Abhijay, again, asking you the same question. What's been your strategy, especially you working in the Jalandhar city, which is a tier 2 city as compared to Delhi and Mumbai? What's been your strategy to overcome the advertising revenue loss and the steps that you've taken to retain the audience which has come on?
So it has been very different for us in comparison to metropolitan cities. So basically, we are based out of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? So for us, the revenue loss in digital was for only 1.5 months. So which is as cyclical as any, like for example, it happened during the summer time. So summertime is usually lean for digital for us. And we really didn't see that impact that most of the other media houses are witnessing. As far as print is concerned, we did see a 40% downfall, but it's now back to 85% as of last month. So I think because, see, people are consuming, people are buying things. They have only shifted their buying patterns from retail to online, but the consumption is still going on, and therefore we haven't really seen a massive dip in our digital revenues as of now. And but we did see a massive growth in our online audiences, and instead of scaling back, we are actually pushing forward because we are trying to capitalize on this time to attract more and more engagement through our users and more loyalty. We are focusing on loyalty.
Great, great. Loyalty is the key word for the year 2021. I guess there's a huge jump in audience. Let's make them audience and let's make them loyal and let's not let them go away.
Yes.
Right. So moving on to the next question, Sanjay, over here is for you. Is it is expected that the digital advertising revenue will surpass television in the financial year 2021? Well, we have seen how we have leapfrogged in terms of consumer adoption trend this year. What's your take on it, and how do you prepare for it?
We must kind of, when we say digital advertising revenues, we should look at the whole pie. If you look at the digital pie, there are multiple players out there. Dominant ones being, of course, Google and Facebook. Then you have other social media networks. You have e-commerce platforms. You have blogs, independent media digital entities. And then you also have companies like us, which come from a print background or a television background, digital media companies. Now, the total revenue that trickles down to traditional media companies out of the entire digital advertising pie is very small, right? So, when the revenue of digital advertising grows, it either shifts away or comes out of the growth pie. So, what is happening is it is moving away from traditional media companies to platforms to a large extent and getting distributed to a much larger number of players in the digital media space. So the trickle down impact of that on individual companies like us is just marginal. And we have to continue to fight our own battles on our growth by growing our audience reach, creating better value proposition for our advertisers. We cannot just assume that because money is shifting from print or television to digital, it will naturally flow to the digital counterparts of print or TV companies which are losing that revenue. Right? There are many more stakeholders who take away a larger cut of that shift or a larger cut of the growth that happens organically. And I think that's the challenge that digital media companies are facing today. That people who are coming from a traditional news media background, they are not seeing all the dollars being lost in print or television flowing to the digital arms. And therefore they need to create strategies which depend on more diversified revenue streams, which are not just dependent on advertising. And as we have seen, in April and May, the way this industry works is when something panicky happens, the demand for news goes up and demand for advertising goes down. And as the demand for advertising goes down, the pricing, which is dynamic, which is real time, also falls. So your impact on revenues is multifold. There's a 30% drop in demand, but it's not just at a constant price. It's along with probably a 30% drop in prices as well. So the impact that actually doubles up on your top line and on your bottom line. And I think the way forward for media companies is that they should not really get carried away by these shifts, because shifts are not going to translate automatically into your gains. You have to figure out your own ways. The way you have to look at it, the digital media, the advertising industry, you get a larger chunk of that growth, and only then you can create a sustainable business. Plus, how do you diversify beyond digital advertising to create other sources of revenue which give you the cushion in times like we had in April?
Great. I mean, from to sum it up, from what you've said, I think the value proposition bit is something that the fellow publishers who are listening to this panel discussion should take a note of, because if you have value proposition for the users, they'll become loyal and stick to you, and the revenue is secondary to it. I mean, once you have the users, it's going to grow up. Now, asking the same question to you, Abhijay, because you are not just into news as a domain. I've known you for last 7-8 years, and you've ventured out and created some innovative engagement platforms or engagement content for the audience. So, what's your take on it? I mean, you have a better pie in terms of digital rather than just news. So, what's your say on it? Mm, I think we cannot hear you, Abhijay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I agree with Sanjay sir. So basically, we have to create value proposition, and that's what led us to create products like Yum. So, for example, we have a traditional advertiser in print called MDH. Everyone knows MDH masalas, degi mirch. So now the thing is, how much can you offer him in print? You can offer him advertisement space, you can offer him advertorial space, but the client is always looking for richer ways to communicate their brand to the public, right? So that's what led us to create Yum, which is our food channel on social media, where we explore different recipes given to us by our readers, by different people, and that our chefs experiment with, and integrating those brands into those recipes is what is attracting the clients back to us, because we are offering them something which no one else is. So even though a lot of advertising revenue is moving away from the media houses, it is mostly going to influencers. It's a new phenomena these days, but we are not devoid of that pie, because we have created our channels in such a manner that we are not only a news publication house, but as well as an influencer in the market. So I feel adapting yourselves according to the needs of the market is very important. This, I know what I'm saying is very redundant because everyone talks about it, but in the age of social media, we need to adapt on monthly basis. So you can't say what you did back in Jan is going to work in December. You have to create a new product every month to keep your audiences engaged, because these days us media houses are not competing against each other. I'm not competing against a big media house. I'm actually competing with the local influencers, whether it's news, whether it's infotainment, or it's entertainment. So our competition is with hyper local people.
Great insight, Vijay. Sushil, with your brand, Inadu being the core news brand, and then you have multiple brands like TV Bharat and a television channel. Uh, does this statement of digital taking over television revenue or exceeding television revenue scare you, or what's your plan on it?
Yeah, Jitin, it's a well-known fact that the digital advertising revenues are increasing year after year. And multiple media reports has also predicted that in the coming year, 2021, it will surpass even TV revenues also. But as Sanjay has also mentioned, that the whatever digital revenue you are looking at is not coming to the news publishers or the media owners, traditional media owners, those who have ventured into this digital also. And we need to keep in mind that the digital dynamics are quite different with a traditional medium, because 80% of the total revenue is going to the MNCs or the big platforms, Google, Facebook, and others. So most of the news media organizations have really invested a lot of money in digital and expecting a good return, which is not which they are not getting their due share, and this is also well-known fact. So, what my point of view here is that the simply re-engineering our product offerings will not work. We need to innovate and we need to produce some world-class products, and keeping you can say the this audience or the customer at the center. So revenue in digital is growing, but that revenue growth is not compensating the loss incurring in the rest of the mediums.
Great. So, to sum it up, what the fellow publishers who are looking at this panel should understand that what we need to do is create valued content and create niche if you want to take a bigger pie from the overall digital advertising spend, and create that content targeting to the audience what they need. So moving on to the next question, Abhi, we will start from you this time. So the next question is, while OTT platforms were making a mark for themselves in the Indian market, the COVID crisis accelerated the process. From just two OTT providers in 2012, we have around 40 players now. As an industry leader and a diverse content creator in regional and national languages, my question to you is, are you joining this rat race to become a content provider on niche categories?
See, there are two aspects to this question. One is to become an OTT platform, and the second one is to become a content creator. I'm definitely against becoming an OTT platform because it is very difficult to compete with the likes of Netflix, Hotstar, uh, Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon Prime, because the reach that they have is absolutely phenomenal. The kind of resources, the kind of money they have. And we can see that in terms of what is happening to Geo Cinema. Geo Cinema launched with a big bang, but apparently their platform doesn't have content in it, right? So it's very difficult to create a platform, advertise it, and get users. But if the content is not there, you are definitely bound to fail. But as far as the content creation is concerned, that is our forte. That is the USP of people like us. So I think we should focus on creating content for these platforms. I think there is definitely an opportunity over there, whether it's news, entertainment, or infotainment. I believe a lot of media houses have verticals that actually focus on entertainment content. So definitely they should explore working for these platforms rather than creating a platform that competes with these big, um, uh, elephants, which is absolutely a crazy idea.
Great. We have one of the biggest elephant here. Sushil in our TV has the OTT platform. So, Sushil, what's your take on this? Before I move to something.
No, I do agree with Vijay also, because we are in the business of content creation. So our expertise is basically in content creation, whereas the dissemination can be happen on the multiple mediums or platforms, like be it your print, your TV, or digital, or maybe the latest one is the OTT. But what we need to analyze the key factors which are involving in the surge of OTT, this platform. The platforms are offering excellent opportunity for the two key stakeholders, which are your content producer and the content consumers. So content shelf life is more, and consumers are consuming content as per their convenience. These are the two key factors. Then we also need to see that appointment viewing is declining day by day, because the viewers are, or the consumers are preferring to consume the content as per their convenience. So what I want to say is the OTT revolution, joining OTT revolution as a rat race or not is not important. The point is how to produce a quality content and share with our customers, our consumers. And we don't want to be the next Nokia or Kodak. We want to be part of this race, that is for sure.
Great words, Sushil. Sanjay, what's your take? One of your competitors has an MX player, right? So, what's your take? Sanjay, we can't hear you.
Sorry. My take on OTT and video is one, I think one should be very clear on what our core strengths are and then play on them. At Indian Express, we believe our core strength is news. Now, if I look at news and OTT play, I see very little overlap between the two. Right? And for that reason, even news in video format has its challenges in terms of making it profitable, unless you have a massive scale. And the shelf life of news is very small. When you look at OTT platforms, you're talking about entertainment content which has a long shelf life. It doesn't have an expiry date per se. So I think if you're doing that kind of content, then of course it makes a lot of sense. But if you're into the news play and then you're looking at an OTT play, unless you have a massive real-time reach. So if I have a massive real-time reach, I'll lack currents on my site all the time. I would not even venture there. I don't think we are there right now, and therefore we are not looking at it. But the way I look at it, this expanding OTT marketplace is an opportunity for me to strengthen my entertainment beat. Because when you have more choice, that means consumer needs hand-holding to figure out what to watch, where to watch, and that's the role that media has been playing. Both from an advertising platform perspective and a content selection perspective. So I think for me, two content players in OTT moving to 40 is an opportunity to grow my entertainment section. I will cover OTT more vastly. I will tell my consumers what to watch, what not to watch, and if I can vouch, quite confidently that all of us have this challenge today that when we log into any of the OTT platforms that we watch, we probably spend more time trying to figure out what to watch than we actually watch, right? And I think that's where the opportunity is.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question, I'll start with you, Sushil. Here is we have seen how ad tech technology is moving towards a cookie-less world, which will definitely impact the existing revenue from demand partners when it happens. What strategies are you planning to overcome this challenge?
Jitin, I'll start with a lighter note. Cookie-less world may bridge the gap in between the traditional and the digital mediums, because we are in traditional mediums also, which is your print, TV, and radio. So here, what we are doing in digital, we are offering a very, very customized solutions and highly personalized. The targeting is there. Once we will not have this cookie thing, then the first party data will play a very important role. So what advertisers will prefer is to associate with the credible media houses. And second thing, which is equally important, is a second party data also. So in my opinion, this is the time to collaboration. So publishers can collaborate and they can work out solutions where advertisers can reach their target audience effectively and with cost efficiency. So the main differentiator will be the content and the reader engagement. But what I want to communicate is we need to focus on value creation, basically.
Great. Value creation is the word that I'm hearing a lot since the start. So, Sanjay, over to you. What's your take on cookieless world? How does it impact your demand? What strategies are there in place? Or it's too early to think?
No, I think it's not too early to think because if you have to replace third-party cookies with your own data, then you need to start now. Otherwise, you'll not have enough data to really help advertisers make choices. So we started on the journey about 3-4 months back. We started collecting user data, and I think by the time we move to a cookieless world, we'll have enough data about our consumers to help advertisers take the right decisions. Having said that, I think it's just not third party data. You also have to build your first party data, but you also have to build zero party data, which is more information coming from the user that you're able to collect. And that's not easy because nobody wants to share their personal details with you. You have to figure out reasons why people should do it. And again, I'll come back to the word: what is the value that you are creating for the user to exchange that information with you, right? And there are multiple ways of deriving information about the user which can be used by advertisers. The second part, I think today what typically happens is, and there's more so true of your direct advertisers, you largely efficiency of intermediaries will go down in a cookieless world. The efficiency of the publishers will actually go up on delivering campaigns, and that I think is going to have a lot of value, and it'll see more monies flow into the publisher kitty. I think the second important part is today what is happening is when my programmatic partners and others drop their cookies on my site, right, they're able to target my customers, which all publishers believe are premium, on any and every other site, right? So basically, I am allowing my partners to take my data and use it to reach out to the same set of consumers who I believe are really premium and target them on sites which probably sell them at one third or one fourth the price. One of the challenges that we face today is there are a lot of bots. Some of the sites are so blatant that they actually pick up our logos and also use those. And then they run programmatic ads through these partners, generate clicks through bots, and actually chip off a lot of money from the advertising pie in what is called as ad fraud. Right? I think a lot of that probably we should be able to control when some of these things happen. And I think that's where we'll see that the
I think we're losing you,
this
Sanjay. Sanjay,
I'll switch my video temporarily. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
so what I was saying was basically there's a lot of leakage that happens in due to ad fraud. And in a cookieless
Mhm.
world where publishers are more in control and you have fewer programmatic partners, I think the value accretion on a per ad basis or a per user basis for publishers will improve.
Absolutely, absolutely. Abhijay, what's your take on it? Advertising cookieless world or something else for revenue generation for publishers? We can't hear you, Abhijay.
I think,
Yeah, now
okay,
you're.
okay. So I think it's a funny coincidence that we are moving towards a world where we are going to have the same business model as our print model, where it's a hybrid model. So we get some of our revenue from subscription and some from advertisement. I don't think in last 10 years of my experience in this business that ad revenue can sustain the operations for media house, because see, if you want to invest in a single investigative story, the cost runs in lakhs, because there are editors involved, there's a lot of investigation groundwork involved, and it's very difficult to sustain that kind of an operation with ad revenue. So in my opinion, I feel the future is either subscription model only or a hybrid model like that of print, where some revenue comes from advertisement and some comes from subscription based on different business models. Because I know a lot of media houses, for example, the Hindu, they are their revenue, 80% of their revenue comes from subscription and 20 from advertisement, whereas for us it's the exact opposite. We 80% is ad based and 20% is subscription. The ratios are going to vary, but I feel that's what we are looking at in the cookieless world. But I do agree with Sushil sir, the gap between the traditional media and the digital media is going to close down, because now it'll be an apple to apple comparison. It won't, the digital is going to lose that upper hand on any other media format.
Great. Great insights, Abhijay. Subscription is something that the publishers listening to us can take a note of. And the gap, yes, there will be a gap to overcome. Now, coming from revenue to now Web Vitals. My next, I think Sanjay dropped Sanjay here, so I'll start with you, Sushil.
Yeah.
With Core Web Vitals becoming a crucial element of discovering traffic, what we have realized is a lot of publishers do not have the expertise to overcome this challenge. Do you think outsourcing your technology to an expert is a better way of progressing forward than building everything in-house?
Yeah, Jitin, it's a part of business trade-offs. And I'm really in support to the open market innovation. I have write a detailed blog also in INMA on the same. We need to understand our customers, the technology, the competition, and the demographic shift which is happening in the market. As a media house, our core strength is the content, the kind of the content we are generating. And when we are trying to develop all resources in-house, then what is happening? It is not only taking a lot of time, but it is also slowing down our product development funnel. So, in my opinion, we should focus on our core strength first, and let's be open for new association or strategic alliances, or maybe licensing or joint ventures. Innovation or the product development is important, but what is even more important is the speed we are doing this development or innovation. So in my opinion, we must take pride in collaboration and partnering for effective and faster value creation.
Great. I mean, to sum it up, you agree to the statement that if it's an expert handling your technology, it's a better way around.
Yes.
Abhijay, what's your take? All in-house or?
I absolutely agree with Tyagi sir, because it's, we are basically news people. For us, it's important to focus on news. I don't think, unless and until you are a very, very, very big media house, for example, like Times of India, who can afford to have such a big team, I think it makes more sense for us to outsource our development to third parties. And we have been doing so. I mean, for example, AWS, I mean, all my websites and everything, all the hosting takes place on AWS. It's not like I'm going to build up my own data servers or data warehousing. I don't have all that stuff. I don't have the tech know-how. I mean, the same concept applies to any service. I mean, for example, analytics. I mean, we don't develop our own analytic softwares. We depend on GA360. We depend on Adobe. We depend on Oracle for that. So, I mean, we are already doing that, and we must continue to explore our options in tying up with third-party partners who actually excel in what they do and leverage their technologies and their expertise to make sure that our news reaches fast and quick to our readers. I mean, our focus should be on content, and that's about it. Although I do have some development going on in-house, but it does take a toll on me, and I think it really impacts my vision to grow my business.
Great. Sanjay, I don't know whether you got this question. We lost you in between. So I'll just repeat my question. The question was, with Core Web Vitals being a crucial element to success in terms of discover traffic, is it right to build everything in-house or let an expert from an outside or an outside company manage it if they are an expert in it? So what's your take? All in-house or let the expert handle it?
I think there's no single rule that defines it. I think for different areas we've adopted different strategies. So there are areas where we want to do things in house and be in control. There are areas where we want to use the Western market, especially when things are evolving and changing very fast. It makes a lot of sense to work with partners because what happens is they are more agile. They understand the space better. They bring value to table immediately, and you have the choice of moving from one to the other because if one doesn't work out to what you have expectations for, you have a choice to move to somebody else. With in-house technology, sometimes you get stuck and you try to. Plus, I think the other challenge with tech sector is that employee turnover is high. It's a booming sector. There's a lot of demand, resources on your bandwidth. But I think there are certain critical areas where you want to own the tech piece and you want to own certain part of your strategy. So those you should do in house. But a large part, dynamic part, ever changing part, I think a lot of it is much better handled by outsourcing it to partners who excel in it. And also, I think partners bring
Value.
value in terms of cost optimization and scale. Because when something you build it for maybe yourself, so that entire cost is allocated to you. And but when somebody else is building, he's giving you the cost that you're going to build. So unless you have a very strategic differentiator that you're trying to build, which is going to be your USP or something that will give you a moat, I don't think you should really invest in doing things in house.
Great. I mean, if I have to sum it up, I totally agree with all three of you. Where let the experts handle what they do the best. So, moving on to the next question, I'll start with you, Sushil. Here is we seem to have covered technology, video streaming, cookieless world so far, but the most important question I have for the panel here is 85% of the content is consumed on mobile. Do you see a gap or a need to innovate or adopt a way to present content for mobile first delivery and consumption? So, is there a gap that there's so much of consumption on mobile, but the content is still traditionally produced for desktop? Do you see a gap or it's fine?
Jitin, it's a very important question. Although we have noticed a small change in during the COVID period, that traffic is coming back to desktop also. So earlier, if it was like the 15 or 20/80, it is now like the 25/75 kind of a thing. But still, 75 is a very big number. So what my take on this is, Jitin, what is my product? My product is the content. So what I'm producing is the content, and who are our consumers are the content consumers. These are our customers. So if 75% or 85% of my consumers are on mobile, then there's no point that I'll say, okay, no, I'll still stick to the desktop kind of a product or desktop kind of deliveries. So mobile, and at the same time, mobile first doesn't mean that I am doing any compromise on my content quality. The only thing is I'm making it more mobile friendly. And if you'll see our latest this offering also, which is ETV Bharat, that is totally on the mobile journalism. So we are totally agree that okay, where customers are, we need to follow the customers, and we need to offer solution or the content in the form they want or they are looking for.
Great. Sanjay, what's your take? Mobile first creation of content for mobile first consumption or just mobile friendly approach?
So I think the content has to be for the consumer. The device is a media through which content gets consumed. Right? So I think the focus has to be on the quality of content. The packaging of content can be device specific. Right? And there's no doubt that mobile has to be more important than desktop because that's where bulk of your audiences are. But having said that, I think there are two things that everybody faces issues with. One is your own internal teams. All of us work on desktops and laptops. So our primary consumption is desktop. And I've seen I've been trying to correct it for the last 5 years in both the places where I've worked. That don't show me designs on desktop. Don't give me feedback on desktop. Everything has to be mobile centric. But because our own, we are sitting in front of desktops all through the day, and our interaction with our own product is largely on desktop, I see it very difficult to make a change in that behavior. Second, I think there are different kinds of audiences that engage with you on the mobile, right? And can you give, or can you adapt your product to your audiences, right? Can you adapt your content offering to your audiences rather than just putting it on a device? So for instance, young audiences are more interested in snacky content. Senior audiences we have seen are more interested in long form content. Their levels of engagement are different. Younger audiences are okay with small, tight websites or mobile sites. Senior audiences want larger fonts, more spacing to read, because that's how they find comfortable. So I think the experience needs to be customized not only to the device, but also to the audiences that you're catering to. The form factor of content, I think, is something that can adapt. And we do adapt. But mobile first, definitely. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Great. I mean, what you said today is basically looking into the data and deciding your action based on it. I mean, there are such examples which is mobile first content, like in Shorts, for example. It's only, I would say, it's not mobile first; it's only mobile content for it to say, right? And understanding the audience, the age demographics, where they're coming from, what age category do they belong to, and then making decisions based on that. Abhijay, what's your take? You have great products on mobile, especially the Yum and the travel apps that you have.
So for us, it's a very different strategy because we believe in the form of content. For example, if it is entertainment content, we create it in such a manner that it is also for the big format. For example, I mean, Yum, Be There, Health Plus Yoga, all these videos are basically high resolution HD videos. Some of them are even 4K videos because we see a lot of consumption of such content on bigger screens. But whereas if the news is concerned, it's all mobile first. And I personally believe that the consumption of news is going to stay that way. It's definitely leaving the TVs because I won't like to comment, but the TV news channels seem to have been pushing people away from their screens apparently, and the trust of the people is actually coming back to print media for that very reason, and onto different websites. Now people are surfing through 6 to 7 different websites to grab information and form their own opinion. And I don't have to say that about the top strata, top 1% who are educated people. I am seeing that in all segments of the society. I see in my surveys that a lot of people are consuming the same content, same content by 5 to 6 times because they want to grab more and more information to form their own opinion. They're fed up of long format content in terms of news. But in entertainment, it's the exact opposite. People are buying bigger TVs. People are buying smarter TVs. People are watching Netflix, Prime Video, just because there is no advertisement. So they are ready to pay for the content as long as they get a seamless experience. So it depends on the content.
Great. 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 I mean, based on the content, what you suggest is how you should plan your strategy in terms of creation. Great. Before we open it to the floor, I have a last question for all three of you. I'll also request the viewers to type in their questions, which we will ask after the next question. So the final question uh, here is basically, how important is subscription revenue in terms of contributing to your next year strategy? So when I say subscription revenue for next year strategy, is it something that you will explore, or is it in plan in books, and that's what you recommend to other publishers who are listening to you right now? So That's the question. Vijay, we'll start with you.
I think I've already talked about it before. I think it's for us. I cannot comment about anyone else, but for us, it's going to be 10 on 10 priority level, and we are trying to get into subscription as soon as possible. I think that's the future for news content at least, because see, any story that we do requires money. Unless and until people do not want to know the truth behind some fact, that's fine. But if they want the truth, that requires money, because we have to, pay the journalist. We have to pay for the resources. We have to enable them, equip them to get the truth out, and it can be quite a toll-taking process. And definitely, I think if subscription is the only way out to sustain news.
Great. Sushil, what's your take? Subscription all the way for next year? That's your core thought process or business strategy?
Yeah, Jatin, it's very important and very tricky question because worldwide is the point of discussion whether subscription is the way forward, or there's a premium, or there's a metered, or there's a in between. So only subscription, I don't think it is the correct time to go for only subscription. So we can put some of our premium content behind the paywall, and as you can see, the traction will start from the market. It will boost a content editorial team also to produce a better quality content, so that the more subscription will happen. But if you will see the ARPU, which is average revenue per user, is very, very high in subscription vis-a-vis advertising. You can't achieve that kind of ARPU from advertising. So no doubt, subscription money is very important, and rest of our mediums, be it your TV or print, subscription is contributing a significant percentage. So this is the area where a lot of innovation and customizations are required. If you'll see, some of the publisher has started even selling per news, which is like your iTunes. The way iTunes has worked, the similar fashion, they are selling even for the single news, which is as low as 1 rupee or 2 rupee, which is a very good sign. Fantastic. And I trust that we will see a lot of development in this area in the coming years. This is the way forward, no doubt, but we need to be very, very careful.
Okay. A cautious step is what you're planning.
Yes.
Great. Sanjay, what's your take? Subscription, hybrid, or just sticking to advertising right now?
So I think at Indian Express we took baby steps. In fact, last year. In fact, we just yesterday was the first anniversary of. So we've already started moving in that direction. We'll keep increasing share of revenue from subscription in our overall revenue pie. I think it's a black and white situation where tomorrow all our sites will go behind subscription and I will move. I don't think that's what's going to happen. The way subscription will pan out is over the next few years, you will have a decent pie of revenue coming in from subscriptions. You will continue to do advertising. It will still be a major chunk of your revenue, at least for the next 3 to 5 years. But subscription will increasingly become an additional source of revenue. It will also give you the ability to do good journalism. Today, print funds a large part of the journalism for us, right? And as we see the print revenues come under stress because of distribution challenges on account of COVID, because of shifting pattern of new age consumers to digital. Digital news publishers will have to figure out how to fund the newsroom cost. Good newsroom, which can do good stories, as my colleagues were mentioning, costs a lot of money. You want to do investigative journalism, you want to do good news, you want to fact check on things, you want to do take care of the responsibilities of the news media organization. I think consumers need to understand that all of this costs decent amount of money. And till now, newsrooms were funding a lot of this cost. But going forward in the future, that's going to happen. And consumers have typically been used to paying for news. They've been paying for newspapers, they've been paying for magazines, they've been paying for TV channels, and there's no reason why they will not pay for news content in a digital format. Yes, the ecosystem started with free content, but that's not how it will end. There will continue to be a few players who will continue to offer news for free. But I think any respectable, reputable media house which produces quality content will ultimately start charging customers for quality content. And when you give quality content, you will attract quality audiences. When you have quality audiences, you will also get higher money for your advertising piece. And then I think a lot of people will see value. Moving to a paid model makes more sense. And if a lot of quality publishers take their content behind paywall, I think the consumers will have to make a choice between brand A and brand B, but ultimately they will end up paying for content. So this, right now consumers are paying in terms of their content. So as the example was mentioned, that today people go to 6 different sites to check what is real news or what are different news on the same topic. If you can give all of that at one place and the consumer kind of pays for it a small amount, I think it's a decent trade-off between the time that you're spending to get authentic news versus translating that into a small amount of money to get that same piece of information from a single source.
Great, great. Thanks so much for the insights, Sanjay, Vijay, and Sushil, on the subscription model. I think that's the hottest topic right now. And we have a couple of questions from the audience on the subscription model. So I'll start with the first question, which we got from Sanjay Nagpal. Is, do you think subscriptions will fly in India? People don't want to pay for OTT. Why will they pay for news? Well, it's very valid. Anyone can start. Abhijit, why don't you take it over?
Already paying for OTT. I mean, if you look at the Disney's Hotstar numbers, I mean, people, the kind of attraction they got in last 2 years is absolutely phenomenal. I think people will pay for news, but it will be definitely hyper local focused. I mean, national news might be, people might not want to pay for it because there are a lot of sources for the same news. But as far as hyper local news is concerned, since the players are very few players in the market, they will want to pay for that. I think so. I mean, we are yet to explore that, so I really can't make a stronghold comment on that. I mean, or it cannot be steadfast. I mean, we'll just have to wait and watch. But in my opinion, they will pay for it, provided we do provide exclusive news, like Sanjay sir said.
Great. Sushil, what's your take? Will it fly or no?
No, why they will not pay? They are paying for the newspaper, they are paying for the TV channels, news channels. So if your content is good and they want to consume your content, then certainly they will pay. But it is not that easy. Also, you need to put some premiumness in your content. But sooner or later, subscription is the way forward. So that is why I said, okay, maybe first 10 news, you can go for the metered. First 10 news are free, and then after that, if the per news, you will charge something. We don't believe that, okay, there's a fixed cost is applicable to all. So it is better to start with a small, give some news at a free, and after that you will start with the charging per news item. This kind of a solution will do much better than the flat subscription model.
Great. Sanjay, your take? Sushil has a great idea on subscription, which is basically giving some content free and then charging for the rest. What's your take? I mean, will it fly?
So I think somewhere where people get confused is, so we reach out to almost 180 million people on a monthly basis. Putting 180 million people into paid subscribers, right? Even if I put 1% of these people to paid subscribers, I'm good, right? It takes care of newsroom costs. So I think what we need to understand is, not everybody will pay. Not all content is worth paying for, and there are certain commodity content which will be freely available. But as we said, there is some content which really takes a lot of effort and which makes your brand stand apart from the crowd, which is exclusive to you, which is going to add a lot of value. People will see value in paying for that content. And as I said before, you don't want everybody to pay. You don't need everybody to pay, right? So there'll be a freedom model for most publishers, where you will have your advertising content coming in, where you will have commodity content coming in. When I say commodity content, what I'm getting from the wire services is available across the sites, right? I will pay for that, today, unless I'm adding value to it. But there are exclusive stories, investigative stories that Express, for instance, stands for, right? It takes anywhere between 3 months to 6 months to do a investigation. There's a team of journalists, editors involved. Sometimes we collaborate with other publications to do those stories. There's a huge investment that goes in. And if those investigations and those news stories create value, people will pay for it. And as it, again, the point is, you don't need all your customers to pay. You need a very small fraction of customers to pay, because the average revenue per user with these small customers is going to be so much more higher than what you make from all your customers. The model will become viable. And it will keep growing. It's a creative model. If I have 50,000 subscribers today and I add another 50,000 next year, then I'm sitting on a base of 1 lakh subscribers. The next year I add another 50,000, hoping that I retain the original one, becomes 1.5 lakhs. So it is not that everybody's become a subscriber, and it is not that everybody needs to become a subscriber tomorrow. This is a long-term play. It will happen gradually over a period of time. Habits will change. And I think the challenge of people not paying, I think it comes with people with older generation. Young people don't really mind paying for content. They're so used to swiping their card or digitally or making payments digitally, they don't even think about it twice. So the new generation of news readers whom you will attract and retain are going to become your core long-term subscribers in the long run.
Great. I mean, that makes it clear, very much clear for publishers what strategy to adopt, whether it's subscription or advertising revenue. Now we are running short of time, or actually we have exceeded time. Just would like all of you to say a concluding statement. My concluding statement for publishers who are watching this is: focus on value content, and revenue will follow you. What's yours, Abhijay, Sushil, and Sanjay?
So I just wanted to answer Anshika's question. It was
Okay.
very interesting. She asked about the influencers. So I think the big brunt is being faced by the Bollywood stars and the singers who used to popularize a product or advertise it. Now people are not going for that. People want original opinion, right? So people are going for local, hyper local influencers. What we are facing in news, that's the exact same thing happening is in the advertising world, where these influencers with just merely 20,000 followers are commanding the advertising of the product. I have seen we have more than 20 influencers in a city like Jalandhar, which is a small city, right? And we have 20 of those. And I've seen all those influencers getting Body Shop products to review, and these influencers don't even charge. As long as they are getting freebies, they are ready to talk about those products. So I think that's a new phenomena that must be explored, because it's kind of a competition for us as well. I mean, obviously these new products who used to advertise with us are now exploring new options. They are looking for very genuine, very local people to review their products rather than go with the big brands.
Great answer, Abhijit. So, what's the concluding statement? What do fellow publishers look for in 2021?
I think just focus on content, new content, innovative content, value creation. All those words talk about one thing, that we need to focus on our expertise, and that's content. Nothing more than that.
Great. Sanjay, how do you conclude?
So I think the focus has to be the customer. The customer was advertiser. The customer is now going to be the subscriber. Both are going to be your customers. Focus on them, their needs, and I think you'll have a success story. Diversify your revenue streams. Keep adding more and more revenue streams. So within advertising, there are multiple things. There is native, there is content, there is display, right? There's programmatic. Similarly, in subscription, you will have retail, you will have bulk subscriptions, you will have pay by article. So just keep adding to your portfolio, because different people will have different needs, and keep the eye on your customer. So the customer is king at the end of the day. Content is a way to get there. And I think as long as we are clear on that, we should have a good home run.
Great. Sushil, your comment?
Yeah, the same. The customer is the king, no doubt about it. Advertiser or advertising revenue follow your customers, your leaders. And in my opinion, we need to do some strategic innovations, keeping customer or leader interest at the core. So that is what I want to communicate.
Great.
One more
Uh,
thing, Ashish Tiwari asked a question, a very interesting one. What do you think about subscription versus AdSense versus native advertisement, which is better? I think, Ashish, in my opinion, it's going to be a hybrid model, as Sanjay sir and Sushil sir also discussed, hybrid model of subscription and Google AdSense, which is programmatic. That's what we call it. Native, I don't think it's going to survive long because it is misleading, and that kind of hurts the credibility of your brand. If you are trying to make people read something which is not authenticized by you yourself, and native advertisement is all, I personally feel it's not credible at all. I am planning to remove it from my portals altogether, and I think someone who believes in real journalism and stands for the ethics of journalism should actually keep away from native advertisement.
Great. Thanks, Abhinay, for answering that question. Uh, and thank you so much for the time. It was a pleasure having all of you here, and I
Thank
hope the answers that you've given enlighten the publishers who are listening to this. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.